Well, hello everyone. How are we today? Good. A little chilly, but you're here. So it is heated in here. So hope you stay nice and cozy. And welcome to all of our friends at home who are watching. My name is Katie Gleddy-Syan. I am the director here at McFarland Senior Outreach. And I am thrilled to be welcoming you to our very first ever Reimagining Retirement lecture series. So today we are going to be welcoming Wendy Crone, who is a retired professor from UW-Madison here and also a lifelong artist. She's going to tell you all about her journey. I am so pleased to be welcoming her because she is a fabulous artist who has won the distinction of being the Dane County Cultural Arts Commission Artist for the Poster for 2026. And I also get to call her a friend of mine. So I am so pleased to be able to introduce her. Please give a warm welcome to Wendy Crone.
Thanks so much, Katie, and thank you all for coming today. I'm happy to be part of this series and looking forward to upcoming talks as well. And I'm excited to talk to you about my journey as an artist. And I'm going to split the talk into sort of three parts. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my story. Then I'll focus on my art practice, and then I will make some suggestions and maybe a little bit of advice and provide a couple of resources for those of you who think of themselves as creatives or are interested in delving into that a little bit more. So when I was in high school, I thought I needed to make a choice, that there was a fork in the road and I either needed to be an artist or be an engineer. And I struggled a little bit with kind of imagining how I would make a living as an artist, and so I ended up choosing the engineering path. And that allowed me to do some great things that I was very interested in. But I'll circle back to this idea of having to make choices a little bit later. So just quickly, I went to University of Illinois for my undergraduate. I had the opportunity to work as a co-op and an intern throughout that experience. Started out at Caterpillar Tractor Company, also worked for a small company called Sonoscan and gained some experience. And those opportunities actually allowed me to pay for school, which was an important part of why I thought engineering was probably a pretty good choice for me to start out with. I went and did my master's at Brown University and spent a little bit of time studying overseas at University of New South Wales in Australia. And when I came back, I went to the Twin Cities and I started working in industry at a company called Cardiac Pacemakers, which is now called Guidant, and they make pacemakers and defibrillators. I spent just a little bit of time in industry and decided to go back to graduate school and did my PhD work at University of Minnesota. And all of these degrees were in engineering mechanics, and I went from University of Minnesota directly to UW-Madison as a faculty member and had a wonderful faculty career doing teaching and research in the area of engineering mechanics. I had the opportunity to have a wonderful experimental lab and work with fantastic undergraduate and graduate students on research projects. Everything from metallic materials and phase transforming materials to polymers, and then in the kind of second half of my faculty career doing primarily biomechanics and looking at biological tissues and how they behave. I do a little bit of research still. I officially semi-retired. I'm a rehired annuitant at the university with a little part-time kind of gig there, and get a chance to continue collaborating with my colleagues in engineering, and particularly working, my lab developed a platform where we can grow cells of the heart in a dish and get further understanding about their biology and also study disease and particular cardiac diseases. So I could spend a whole, 50 minutes talking about this, but I won't. So we'll move on and talk about some of the ways that in my career I was able to bring together art and science, and particularly how to engage public audiences and children with science and engineering concepts. This work allowed me to kind of combine those passions of art and science along the way, and enjoyed being able to interact with people who might not think of themselves as interested in science or engineering topics through art, and having them come around to realizing that they actually understood and were interested a little bit more than they had initially envisioned. This involved everything from creating art exhibits using microscopy images, so things that are smaller than the eye can see, and brought that science into the public sphere, either in coffee shop shows. In one case, we participated in an exhibit that was at the Dane County Airport as well. But a lot of the work that I've done kind of bringing art and science together has been involved with outreach with kids, and trying to help them see themselves as both artists and scientists in different ways. This particular set of activities was one that we developed around gold and silver nanoparticles. So in the medieval stained glass windows, we now know that some of those beautiful colors that you see are actually because there are tiny gold and silver nanoparticles suspended. And their shape and specific size give different colors. And we can recreate those nanoparticles now in a lab in a very regular sort of way. And instead of suspending them in glass, we can suspend them in polymeric materials so that you can actually just kind of paint them or drip them onto a surface. And so we have students that are creating stained glass, faux stained glass objects, and making artwork and learning about nanotechnology along the way in this particular activity. I had an opportunity to take a sabbatical in which I spent time working with exhibit developers across the nation. And this was a lot of fun because, what a dream job being a museum exhibit developer. The work with those folks was really fantastic, and I was exploring ways in which researchers could connect with museums and connect with audiences in different ways. I learned how to be that effective bridge myself, and then worked with other researchers to help them to be more effectively engaged with museums and their exhibit development. And along the way, I got to work with a number of scientific illustrators who were exploring ways in which to visualize the nanoscale and help people have a visual concept of something that we can't see with our eyes. We also did a bunch of exhibit development here in the Madison area and with Milwaukee's Discovery World Science Museum a number of years ago. And one of the most fun projects that I worked on was with a balloon artist, and he and I developed ways that we could make nanostructures larger than life using balloons. And so we created these very large carbon nanotube balloon structures with kids in outreach events and talked to them about that nanotechnology. So as I am phasing into retirement, I'm still involved with one of our centers on campus, and that's our Materials Research Science and Education Center, and we do a number of different outreach projects, the most recent of which have used some of these visual ideas with free kits that we assemble and then give out to various communities. We do this at food pantries, including our McFarland food pantry here, and rural schools where they might not have the opportunity to engage with science outreach in ways that folks do in the Madison area. We started doing this in the pandemic. My colleague here is distributing kits at the St. Vincent de Paul food pantry because we didn't have a way to interact directly with kids. And it turned out that this was actually quite effective in getting us to audiences that we don't normally connect with. So we still continue our kit development. Patterns at Play was one that we sent out last in 2024. And then Fun with Fringes is a really fun kit that connects a little bit to some of my earlier research, but also these visual ideas. So that's, in a nutshell, things that I have been doing on sort of more of the engineering side of things and the engineering outreach side of things. But I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the art side of things. So I think of myself as a lifelong artist. I got my very first set of pastels when I was in middle school, and I started painting. And it turned out that I was producing actually reasonable paintings without much instruction. And my family was, amazed. And how did Wendy become an artist? We had no idea. Because there weren't any other artists in the family that they knew of. But it turned out that they were just people who hadn't had the time or the opportunity to spend time being creative. And I'll touch back on that in a few minutes. So when this background of being an artist and making some decisions about what I wanted to do for a career, when I went from high school, where I was actually doing quite a bit of art and showing my work, to college, I didn't do as much art, and I found that it was really missing from my life. So when I was in graduate school, I rekindled that connection to art. I got to take a pastel class from at Rhode Island School of Design when I was at Brown University. That fulfilled sort of a lifelong dream of being able to, go to art school. It was just one class, but it was something. And then when I was at University of Minnesota, I spent a lot of time doing pottery. I took a ceramics class at the university and then did a number of non-credit workshops and classes, and loved spending time doing that. And as I mentioned here, that it let me keep centered, especially while I was writing my dissertation. It was something that I could go to completely forget about all the other things that I was thinking about and were crowding my mind. So let's skip forward a few years. I started doing more painting again when I came to UW-Madison, but it was really kind of in fits and spurts. And when you're an assistant professor, there's a lot of demands, and a young family also has demands. But I began painting, engaging a little bit more in an intentional way about 15 years ago. And I went back to that early love of working with soft pastels. So because I had very sort of limited time in order to paint and to take classes for painting, I decided that I would just focus on one medium, pastels, and then I would focus on one sort of subject area at a time. And so I started out working with still life so that I could learn, do, and improve over time with that. This helped me to gain experience and learn techniques and build on those as I went further on in my artistic endeavors. One of the great joys that I get from painting is to experience something and capture it in my artwork. And that allows me to savor that experience a little bit more deeply and go back to that experience over time. You probably have, those of you from McFarland have stumbled across the stands that sometimes pop up outside of Mapletree on Highway 51. And in 2014, there was a stand that came out that had the most amazing peaches. I mean, these peaches were just like, and I ate one of those, the peaches, and I was immediately like, I've got to paint these peaches. So I started painting the peaches. I took lots of photo reference of peaches. I painted peaches for months. I have a whole series of paintings that's just on peaches because of that just wonderful experience. And I think that's one of the neat things about art is you can experience something more deeply and you can remember something more deeply as you engage with it in your artwork. I transitioned over a couple of years to doing more landscape painting. And these days I do primarily landscapes, although still lifes on occasion. And way in the past I was doing more portraiture type of work, but I haven't circled back to that yet. But I had an instructor who forced me to go out and paint from life, and to go out in what's called plein air paint. So you take your easel and all your supplies, and you drag it outside, and you look around you and you figure out what you're going to paint, and you paint that in the moment outside. I absolutely hated it at first. It was just like the worst experience ever. There were bugs, I can't figure out what to paint, there's too many, there's 360 degrees of stuff around me. But as it turns out, it was a really important development experience for me to learn how to see better, and once I became more comfortable with it, to really sort of engage in that experience. My husband and I were lucky enough to teach a UW Study Abroad program in Florence, Italy, for a semester, and I dragged my easel and all my pastels with me to Florence, and got the chance to go out and paint on site in Florence. And those memories of those two on the middle and right hand side, or from those plein air experiences, are so seared into my mind because of being able to enjoy being in that experience. And here's proof that I was out there painting. So you can see the easel and my supplies laying there on the ground, and me at work. Since then, I've continued to do landscape painting, and I feel like I'm improving over time. So here you're seeing some works from about 5 or 6 years ago. And my suggestion for you is, if you have limited time, is to try to stay focused on one particular medium or one particular subject matter, because that can help you to gain experience and to improve and to enjoy it more deeply. So now that I'm embarking on retirement, I'm having more time for art, and I'm also trying to think about it as a second career, as a way for me to make this transition and be intentional about additional time for art and artistic ventures. But I would say, regardless of when you retire or how long you've been retired, think about rekindling an old love, or finding a new love, and being creative with at least some part of your time. So let me talk to you a little bit about the more recent journey. It's allowed me time to revisit scenes and topics that I've loved. During the pandemic, we used to take drives, because we just had to get out of the house. And so we get in the car and we drive around and look at the world from the car windows. And I would snap pictures along the way. And this painting on the top from 2020 is one of the paintings that came out of one of our drives. And I always remember that time of that being together as a family. We were stuck in a car but instead of the house, but still, and was able to revisit that image and that time here in 2025, and did a little series of paintings based on that same image. Because you can spend time immersing in something and revisiting it over time, I think it has another way of experiencing a particular thing. I also have favorite spots that I frequent. Just the other day, we were talking about Hidden Farm Road and Orchard Hill Park, and those, there's some fantastic inspirational spots right here in our community. McFarland has some wonderful parks and places. And so I often go there looking for inspiration for painting, and occasionally painting while I'm in the parks. Occasionally, we see just a little glimpse of nature. One day I was taking a walk down our street, and there was this one little spot. And to be honest, the surroundings are not at all pretty, but this one little glimpse of nature that just called me in and said, you need to paint this. And I did a little series called Around the Corner, 3 different paintings from this little spot on Larson Beach Road. And that painting is what was chosen as the Dane Arts poster this year. So the ability to sort of spend time and revisit and to do work in series is something that I have really enjoyed during my additional time in retirement. So let me talk a little bit about process. So some of you may be painters and may be interested in some of the details of this. Some of you may not be painters and are just wondering, well, how does it end up looking like that? So I'll give you two examples. The first one is pretty quick. Pastel medium is a fantastic, incredibly versatile medium. You can make it look a lot of different ways. You can make it look like a drawing. You can make it look like an oil painting. It depends on the support that you're using, the paper that's underneath, and how you apply it. And it's a dry medium. You saw earlier, and I'll show you again a picture of this little sticks. They kind of look like chalk, but really they're pigment that's suspended in a binder. So it's like an oil paint. You know, oil paint is a pigment that's suspended in oil, except these are suspended in a hard binder. And that makes you able to sort of interact with that pigment very directly and apply it in really interesting ways. So oftentimes I will start with what's called an underpainting, and people use underpaintings in lots of different mediums, but this is an example of an underpainting where I'm just thinking about what areas are going to be dark and what areas are going to be light, and kind of a mid-ground, middle colors. And then because I'm working on like a sanded paper that allows me to put lots of layers of pastel paint on it, I want to sort of push that first layer back into the tooth of the paper. And so I use a solvent, a terpenoid solvent, with a brush to actually paint. So I paint this back into the paper, and that serves as a background that I can then apply layers of pigment to that are dry layers of pigment. And so ultimately this ended up being the painting on the right, called Above the Valley. We had been out for a drive. My husband and I had been looking for fall colors, and it was a somewhat unsuccessful drive because it was pretty early in the season. And so we were heading back home, and we were driving up Broadhead, and I'm like, oh, stop the car, because there was this just gorgeous tree in someone's yard right above where Valley Road starts, and took some reference photos there, and then came home and started painting this particular one. I did two. The other one is not as good. This one, I really liked how it turned out. So the second example, I'll go through a little bit in more detail. I just did this painting in January, and I was thinking about this talk, and I was thinking, you know, you should probably like document process a little bit more so that you can kind of show people some of those middle steps in between. So I take a lot of what I call photo references. These are not, you know, photos that I'm probably going to print and display. They're more sort of photos that allow me to remember sort of the scene or lighting or compositions that I might be interested in. My phone is just crammed full of them. And we had an opportunity to spend some time in France in the fall, and I had this wonderful hike, and the sun was glorious that day, and probably 150 photos on this particular hike. I wasn't hiking particularly fast because of all the photos I was taking. So I picked this one to start with, and I have this app that I use on my phone called Notenizer, which allows you to look at an image as a notan in grayscale with just 3 values. So you can kind of simplify the image, think about, well, what's working in this composition or not. And from there, I oftentimes do a sketch. And so this is my sketch where I decided, you know, which of these trees and branches were going to stay, which of them were going to go, kind of refining a little bit of what I had in my mind in terms of how this painting might work out. And then I set out my palette, and so that means, you know, boxes of pastels, and they're gorgeous, and I have way more than what's shown in this image. We just won't tell Alan there who's and start with that as my where I'm going to begin the painting. And then, as I mentioned before, doing an underpainting. And this one has a little bit more detail in it because I was really quite focused on this clump of trees, and I wanted to have that clearly defined where that was going to be in my underpainting. So that's the first, sort of sketch on the paper. This is about an 11 by 14 work. From there, using that solvent again and really kind of painting this into the background. And at this point, I can usually tell if a painting's going to turn out halfway decent or not if the underpainting looks like something that could be exciting or interesting. If it's looking like there's a problem at this stage, is usually the best point to correct it instead of struggling with it all along the way, but sometimes I forget that and struggle anyway. But I'm learning. I learn. All right, and so then I start applying those dry pigments to the surface. And I almost always work from, sort of the sky, the top of the painting, towards the foreground, and oftentimes the bottom of the painting. Here I've started to put in the sky and that very far layer of trees. Now I'm thinking about, that bright field in that midground there, and bringing in some more detail into the foliage in the upper part of the tree. Now thinking about the foreground and starting to add some detail in there, and I was really intrigued and fascinated by these sort of quasi-dead, maybe turned to fall, I don't even know what to call them, weeds probably down in the foreground that were really interesting. And so thinking about how to pick them out of there and get them to be a focal point in the image. And then continuing to add detail, refine until I get to the point where I call it done. And so this is a painting that was on a little path called Chemin des Combes, and it gives me the feeling of the place that I was in. And so I'm happy with how that turned out. One of the other things that retirement has allowed me to do is spend more time immersive in art through workshops and retreats. Those are really valuable. Continuing to learn from fantastic artists has been a great value, and also having the opportunity to immerse myself in Artist in Residence program. I was able to spend 2 weeks at Trout Lake Station in the fall in an Artist in Residence program there. There was one other artist with me at the time, and we got to interact with the researchers, learn about the flora and fauna, take some excursions with them, and then the rest of the time was for our art. And they gave us some lovely studio space to work with. So this allowed me to go up close to Boulder Junction in northern Wisconsin. Trout Lake Station is part of the Center for Limnology at UW-Madison, and interact with the researchers there, learn about what they were doing, and do artwork. So I produced a number of paintings, both in watercolor and pastel while I was there, and I'll show you a few of them. The station entrance looks like that. It's a lovely spot. I immediately started taking pictures of it as soon as I came inside, and knew that was going to be one of the first paintings that I did. Trout Lake and the surrounding lakes are just amazing, and the director of the station took us on a boat tour of the lake, and we circled all of these little islands that were out there. And this small little island is unpopulated and relatively untouched by humans, and was just this lovely little refuge for for nature to continue to take hold and not be disturbed by people. Trout Lake is really an interesting research lake. It's has the trout that are in there are specific species that survived in that lake through the glaciers. So it has some very deep waters, and because of the way the glaciers moved, the trout and several other species in that lake are unique to that place. And then on the grounds of the station, just beautiful scenes pretty much everywhere we turned, and trying to capture on this right-hand painting some of the wildflowers that were in bloom at the time and the beautiful pollinators that were active. In this case, tucking that little fritillary butterfly in there that was bouncing around and enjoying all of the wildflowers. In the evenings, I spent time doing watercolor paintings. I've started a series of paintings that are focused on the foliage of a place. And so I collect leaves from around a place and then use that as the grounds for a painting. And it has allowed me to kind of know a place in a slightly different way and to really kind of think about, what is growing here. The creation of these watercolor paintings, I find it very meditative. It's this layered composition process that I've really enjoyed. But it also has some little bit of chaos to it because of the way you start the first layer of painting, that you start with the underpainting in this particular with this particular medium. I'm using watercolor and tissue paper to create these interesting patterns. So I received word recently that I just got accepted to the Sherbarth residency program in March, and so I'll get to spend 2 weeks at Shake Rag Alley and in the Mineral Point area, and so I'm excited to spend some time exploring the Driftless area and painting for a couple of weeks in March again. All right, so I'm going to switch gears and offer some thoughts and advice and maybe recommendations to those of you thinking about reimagining your retirement or spending more time with art. The first thing that I want to point out is that it's never too late. Even if you don't think of yourself as an artist, it is not too late. Way back in middle school, I mentioned, nobody in my family was an artist. Well, it turns out that they just hadn't spent time doing art. They were actually quite creative people. My grandmother ended up being a phenomenal porcelain painter, and I still have some of her pieces in our china cabinet from the work that she did. And my mom took up oil painting in her retirement and went to a group class with some friends of hers and really loved that experience so much. Both the friendships that she deepened with in that class and also just being able to spend time doing artwork. When she downsized, she picked the paintings she wanted to keep and then gave away all the rest of her paintings to family and friends, and that was a really fun experience of being able to give that little piece of yourself to others and having them enjoy having that treasure. So my suggestion is to dabble, get inspired, find something that you want to explore more, and you're really just never going to know until you try. So try something new. And sometimes that can feel a little daunting, but there's actually some great resources out there that will make it easy and make it actually fun to try something new. If you're thinking, well, I'm not quite ready for a class yet, maybe I'm just interested in learning a little bit in the privacy of my own home, there's great videos and wonderful resources available on the internet, and a lot of them are out there for free. And so there's a couple of people that I follow on YouTube. I thought I'd just give 2 examples here. Elaine Picard is a really fantastic pastel painter, and I watch his demos and rewatch his demos, enjoy learning the kinds of things that he's teaching in the work that he's doing. And then for something completely different, I tend to spend a lot of time watching furniture refinishing videos, and I've learned a lot from those, and I've done a couple of little things on my own. And I thought I would just give a shout out to a local YouTuber, Barry, who's Mad City Modern. He's in the Madison area and does furniture refinishing videos, and he's basically revamped his whole career to this is what he does. He's a great person to watch and follow. There's all kinds of information out there for pretty much any topic that you can think of that you might be interested in learning and exploring. You can also take in-person classes, which I highly recommend. I've had wonderful experiences with the classes that I've taken and found it fantastic instructors and mentors from those experiences. So I'll just give a few ideas here. Olbrich, which is nearby us, has some fantastic classes from painting and drawing to gardening and lots of other things in between. So take a look at their calendar, at their Learn part of their website, and see what they're offering. If you're interested in doing something a little bit deeper engaged, think about Madison College. They have art continuing education courses as well as full art classes there that you can take advantage of. Wisconsin is also a great area for other places that you can go to really sort of take some time, a couple of days to a full week, learning and doing on a particular subject area. So I'll just point out a couple of them. Shake Rag Alley that I mentioned has a number of classes. Adama has classes. My most favorite place on the planet is the Clearing. I love the Clearing so much. It's basically like summer camp for grown-ups. And they have a chef and a kitchen, and they feed you delicious meals, and you just go and do your creative thing. That can range from taking painting and art classes to fiber arts to glass. They have a forge. They have writing, nature journaling, all kinds of different things. So these places, you might think, well, I don't really want to be a landscape painter. That's fine. There's all kinds of other things out there that you can explore and do. And you can do it for a week and say, that was fun, I'm done. Or you can do it for a week and decide, this is something that I really want to spend more time with. Think about taking some short or longer workshops and classes that might spark your interest. I also have to thank very much all of the fantastic teachers and mentors that I've had and been able to engage with. Kay Brathel-Hosfeld, I've taken a number of pastel classes from her. I actually used to tease that I was stalking her because I was pretty much taking every single class that she was offering in pastel, some of them multiple times. But she was a fantastic teacher, and I learned so much from her, and she's a great friend. Helen Klebesattel is a phenomenal watercolor painter here in the Madison area. And Helen does a number of different classes. She does classes at Olbrich and Adama as well as other places. Now that I'm starting to get back into doing some more watercolor work, I finally got to the point. I've been following Helen's work for years and thoroughly enjoyed her Facebook community, the Cabin Fever Creative Community. But I got to take my first class from her, and it was fantastic. And then I'll also mention a couple of plein air artists. John happens to be in the room here, John Ribble, and Jan Norsetter. As I mentioned, that plein air, doing work in plein air out in the world where you're taking all your supplies can be a little intimidating, but it is so much fun. And I've learned a lot from the plein air classes and workshops that I've taken. So I want to mention them and that opportunity as well. So the idea of working from life, if you're an artist already, push yourself, if you don't already, to work from life a little bit more. And there's some great opportunities. If you're a painter, there's a group called the Dane County Plein Air Painters, and it's just sort of a loosely coordinated group. We have a Facebook page, and there's a coordinator during the more pleasant months of the year, maybe not in January. There's meetups once a month and at one of the Dane County parks. And that allows you to decide, hey, I'm going to go out and paint this afternoon. And you can do it with a group of people. The other thing that I highly recommend is Urban Sketchers. Urban Sketchers is really a worldwide movement of people who go on site with their sketchbooks and make art. I actually joined a sketcher group when I was in Florence when they were sketching at a museum one day, and it was a fantastic way to meet up with people when you're someplace else. The Madison Sketcher Group I have gone to off and on over the years. It's a really nice group of people. They sketch year-round. Usually their meetups are about every other week. During winter months, they might go to a coffee shop or the Capitol building. During the summer months, they're usually outside or maybe at a park or the zoo. So those are some really fantastic opportunities. And then I have to give a plug for what we're doing here in McFarland, because the Friends of McFarland Parks has been organizing an annual Arts in the Park event where you can be a sketcher or a painter or somebody who just wants to try it out or watch what other people are doing. We have an outing each fall that we advertise on our Friends of McFarland Parks Facebook page. So these are some pictures from the last 2 outings that we did in the parks here in McFarland. If you like to sketch, I highly recommend taking it on the road with you. So sketching can be a really fun way to engage with some place in a different way than just being a tourist. So take your sketchbook, sit down at a cafe or on a park bench and sketch what's around you. If you like to journal, maybe start thinking about adding a few sketches into your journal and finding ways to capture that moment a little bit differently. And then I highly recommend finding other people who are interested in doing the same sorts of things that you are doing. So in the Madison area, there's a couple of really great opportunities to connect up if you're an artist already. You might think about joining the Association of Wisconsin Artists. There's a chapter locally here. And there's also the Wisconsin Visual Artists and Madison Art Guild. And all of these groups do regular exhibits, and their members are able to show their work and engage in various different kinds of activities with the group in order to learn and grow as an artist. If you're just starting out and you're like, I'm not quite there yet, but you're thinking about starting to show your work, think about the Wisconsin Regional Arts Program. This program started in 1940 and is a fantastic way for non-professional artists to engage with each other, learn a little bit along the way, and to show their work. I have some flyers in the back if you're one of those people you think you might be interested. I'm one of the co-coordinators for the Madison Wrap that's coming up. We've got a deadline for entries here at the end of the month. So if you think, well, I have 2 pieces of photography or paintings or sculpture or pottery that I would be comfortable showing, join us and show your work. And then ultimately, just practice. So if you find something that you're enjoying doing, practice. The key to developing as an artist and developing some level of mastery is just spending time on it. So spend that time. Try to schedule your art to do it regularly. Maybe join a painting group, take some classes, and you'll be able to see fantastic progress. But most importantly, enjoy what you're doing because that's the real joy of artwork. I wish you great adventures in your retirement or your soon-to-be retirement, or if you're thinking about it. I'm excited to see what's next in the Reimagining Retirement series, and thank Katie again for the invitation to come and speak with you. You can find more about my work on my website. And then I have a few postcards at the back on the back table that you're welcome to take. And then lastly, I want to say a big thank you to Dane Arts. Dane Arts supports the arts in Dane County. And one of their annual activities is to put together a calendar and a poster. And Augusta is here in the back, and she has calendars for sale and posters, which has one of my paintings on it this year. And I thank Dane Arts for their support here in the county and personally over the years. So I'll end there and see if there's questions.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. We have some time here, so if any of you have a question about Wendy's art, her process, her career, anything like that, please raise your hand. I'll bring a microphone over so everyone at home can hear. There you go. Better. Okay. Here you go.
Wendy, thank you. That was great. How do you know when a painting is done?
Oh, that's a great question. I have one on the easel right now where I don't know if it's done yet. So sometimes I actually put it in a frame and hang it, and then I look at it a week or a month later and go, oh, that's not done yet, and take it out and start working on it again. Sometimes I'm there and I know it, but oftentimes it does take me sitting with it, looking at it, bizarrely taking a picture of it on my phone and looking at it really teeny tiny will sometimes show me things that I need to fix right away. And then occasionally I will send an image of it to a mentor and say, help. And what's still missing, what needs to be addressed in this particular painting. But yeah, being done is a great question. And there have been several paintings that I've gone back to years later, and maybe it's just a little thing, or maybe it's actually reworking a whole section, but sometimes you just don't quite know in the moment how to fix something if it's bothering you.
So I have a whole house full of art supplies
Yes, me too.
because I love the concept of art, and I suffer from perfection paralysis.
Yes.
Can you tell me how to get over that and where to start with all of these brand new art supplies that I just can't seem to touch?
Yeah. So I think trying to think of yourself as practicing and not, like you're not making a product for a show or a gift or something. You're just practicing. And that way it's allowable to make lots of mistakes and have it not be any good, according to you. I'm that way. I'm like, oh, this is crummy. And then I'll come back and look at it a week or two later. I'm like, it's not so bad. So I tend to be my own worst critic sometimes. And so I think just allowing yourself to practice, to dabble, to try things out. I also find that sometimes, especially when I have something new that I want to work with, I'm kind of playing around with a new medium, to pick up one of those videos, to watch some YouTube videos and try to sort of recreate what it is that they're doing. So that allows me to become more comfortable with the medium, and that way I can then start building on that and playing around with it over time. But think of it as practicing, so it's not so stressful.
I noticed that your signature is part of your art. How long ago did you start doing that?
Yeah, so I do sign my artwork, but oftentimes it's hard to notice because it's just kind of a couple of slashes. And I actually started signing that way when I was doing pottery because it's kind of hard to make a signature on a pot, but it's really easy to go chick, 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 chick. So I started that way, and then in my paintings, I sort of transitioned to that way of signing my artwork, probably about 20 years or maybe 25 years or so ago. And sometimes it's hidden in the painting as part of, and sometimes it's a little bit more obvious, but I admire artists who really make a bold signature, but I'm not that artist. I kind of like my way of doing it for me. So, yeah.
Do you have any advice on framing pastel paintings
because of that chalk dust.
Yep. So, it's actually pastels are fairly stable after you have them, on the paper. And especially like a sanded support is going to really kind of hold on to things. The only paper that I've had a little bit more of a problem with is there's like some velvet kind of papers, the like Velvet Elvis sort of papers that you can work with. They're beautiful, but they are not as grippy. I do not spray my work after it's done because that usually changes the color a little bit. So I'll give it a tap, make sure that I'm not, losing anything important when that last little bit of dust falls off. And then frame in a mat, if it's a larger piece, maybe a double mat behind glass. And I found also, particularly some of my paintings lean to being a little bit darker, that I need to use more expensive glass, like a museum glass or an anti-glare glass, so that you're actually not seeing the reflection of things and you're seeing the painting. John?
It helps to put something of a spacer behind the mat so that you're pushing the mat out away from the art, the pastel, and hence if there is dust that will settle, it will settle behind the mat.
Yeah, that can definitely help as well. Yeah, some of the double mats I used actually have a space, have a gap between them, and so that's a nice opportunity to save the mat.
Well, once again, I wanted to thank Wendy, and this being our first Reimagining retirement, this was beautiful. It was so beautiful, wasn't it? All of the slides were just gorgeous, and the reason that we started doing this is, when people retire, we put so much emphasis in our society on our work, on our career, and that defines us in so many ways. And when people retire, it's almost like this heavy mantle can be lifted off, and there's this honeymoon period of, oh, I don't have to work anymore, it's wonderful. But then we hear of some seniors starting to struggle. Like, what do I do, with all my time? And since we put so much emphasis on purpose in our life with our work, when you're no longer working, what does that mean? And what I really want to do, and what I've found through working with older adults these years, is older adults have such a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and creativity and just brilliance. And what I really want to do with this series is emphasize that, give a platform to show all of these amazing people in our community who should be recognized for the wonderful things they're doing, while also inspiring other people to follow new journeys, new pathways, new skills, hobbies, talents. So our next Reimagining Retirement is coming up in early February. It's going to be February 3rd. And it's a little bit of a departure. This is an older adult who lives here in McFarland who fosters and trains therapy dogs. So dogs who will become service animals. So she will be here with Austin, which is her dog, who is going to be, I'm sure, the star of the show. And they are going to be able to show all of the different training methods that they do with that animal, as well as talk about the process of fostering this animal and then letting it go to a family, falling in love with an animal and then being able to let it go. And that's what she's chosen to do with her retirement. So I hope you can join us for that one. Again, that's going to be 1 p.m. on February 3rd. But before we end today, I just want to once again encourage you to go look in the back here. They are selling some of the posters and calendars from the Dane County Cultural Arts Commission. And before we leave, let's please give Wendy one more wonderful round of applause. Thank you so much.